My sister eloped on her wedding day, so the billionaire groom put his ring on my finger instead. The day my sister Victoria eloped for love, Alexander Blackwood, the man she was supposed to marry, turned and slipped his engagement ring onto my finger instead. He spoiled me rotten, making me the most envied Mrs. Blackwood in Manhattan. Even his notoriously critical grandmother patted my hand approvingly. Now this is a true Blackwood bride. Until 3 years later, when Victoria returned claiming she had terminal cancer. My mother collapsed in front of me, sobbing, "Please, I'm begging you, let Victoria have her dying wish." My brother grabbed Alexander by the collar. "She just wants to wear a wedding dress once. If you ever considered me a friend, grant her this final wish." My father issued an ultimatum: "If Victoria doesn't get her wedding before she dies, you're no daughter of mine." Alexander pulled me into his arms in front of everyone. "My wife is Sophia, and only Sophia." Yet within a month, he was forced to his knees, sliding the family heirloom ring onto Victoria's finger, completing the wedding ceremony. His eyes were red as he explained, "This wedding is just so you won't be estranged from your family. Consider it her farewell gift." I was touched by his sacrifice for me. I watched them have their dream wedding, their round-the-world honeymoon. Until I needed spousal verification for my prenatal records, and the nurse frowned at my marriage certificate. "This serial number doesn't exist, and the official seal is wrong." When I went to City Hall to verify, the system showed Alexander Blackwood's legal spouse, Victoria Harrison, my supposedly dying sister. They'd made their fake wedding real, complete with a legal marriage certificate. While my 3-year-old marriage certificate was the fake one. Heartbroken, when Alexander discovered I wasn't crying or making a scene and lectured me about being mature, I smiled and pulled out a red marriage booklet with his business rival. "Sorry, I'm already married. And this time, it's real." Chapter 1. I pushed the certificate back across the counter. "That's impossible. The system must be glitching. Please check again." The clerk's cold response was my death sentence. "Ms. Harrison, checking again won't change anything. The system shows Alexander Blackwood's legal spouse is Victoria Harrison, registered 1 month ago. You're listed as single." The slap stung like fire across my face. I instinctively protected my stomach. Yesterday, Alexander had pressed his hand there saying he wanted a daughter. Today, he'd given me this gift. I hailed a cab straight to Blackwood Tower. At the private penthouse elevator, my finger hovered over the biometric scanner. A laughable realization hit me. After 3 years of marriage, I didn't even have access to his private domain. "Mrs. Blackwood." His assistant chased after me, flustered. "Mr. Blackwood is in an important meeting." "Open it," I heard my own icy voice. "I'll wait for him upstairs." Under pressure, the assistant swiped his card. The moment the door opened, cold air mixed with heavy perfume hit me. I looked up to see 2 silhouettes intertwined against the frosted glass wall. I froze in the doorway. Victoria's sickly voice pierced my ears. "Alex, if Sophia finds out I'm staying here for treatment." She covered her mouth, coughing delicately twice, but her eyes flicked challengingly toward the door. "She's the baby of the family, always unwilling to share. Mom and Matt spoil her, which is fine, but you." She pouted pitifully, gripping Alexander's tie, leaning in suggestively. "I really don't dare tell her that all these years, you've been waiting for me to come back and make it official. If she discovers we finally got our happy ending, will she be able to handle it? Happy ending? Finally together?" I stumbled back. So that's how it was. Through the glass, Alexander's voice held a tenderness I'd never heard. "Enough about her. Did you take your medicine?" His thumb gently traced her lip. "All this coughing breaks my heart." I silently retracted my step. Turning away, the assistant frantically followed. "Mrs. Blackwood, why are you?" I ignored him, walking quietly into the elevator. Chapter 2. Back home, I instinctively headed to the study to draft divorce papers. Then I laughed bitterly. What divorce? The marriage certificate was fake. My hand brushed against an unfamiliar photo album in the drawer. Opening the first page, my breath stopped. 18-year-old Victoria in a white sundress. 20-year-old Victoria in her graduation cap, beaming. 25-year-old Victoria by the ocean. Hair flying. Every photo's edges showed signs of repeated handling. The last photo had writing on the back in sharp strokes. "Tori, 3 years later, you finally came back." I cried until I laughed. All these 3 years, he'd been looking at her photos in corners I never knew existed. When my parents and brother begged him to marry Victoria, his trembling wasn't indignation on my behalf, it was excitement. At their wedding, when he cupped the bride's face with red eyes, it wasn't sacrifice, it was fulfillment. And I, like a fool, thought he was my salvation. I closed the album and returned it to its place. My stomach suddenly churned. I ran to the bathroom, retching. Looking up, I saw my pale reflection. Finally, I remembered why the clerk had been overly deferential to Alexander when we got our certificate, why it wasn't printed in front of us. If he didn't love me, why marry me? Chapter 3. The sound of the lock turning woke me. "Sophie?" Alexander's suit jacket draped over his arm. "Why are you sitting in the dark? Stopped by that Italian place you love. Come have some soup, little foodie." The aroma wafted over, but my eyes fixed on his shirt collar. That provocative lipstick mark glared like blood. Taking the soup, I couldn't help but laugh. "What's funny?" Alexander asked. "Nothing," I accepted the soup. "Just feels like I'm part of your game." He frowned, about to speak when his phone lit up. The lock screen notification blazed, "Wife." But it wasn't me. My hand slipped. Hot soup spilled on my pajamas. Alexander frantically grabbed napkins as his phone clattered to the floor. He quickly locked the screen, transitioning smoothly to the next topic. James mentioned you visited the penthouse today? I quietly stirred my soup, the spoon scraping the bottom. Curious what excuse he'd spin. Then you must have seen the penthouse isn't suitable for recovery. His tone was casual. Victoria's moving here the day after tomorrow. The spoon clinked against the bowl. How pathetic I was, thinking he might feel guilty. The master bedroom is spacious, perfect for her recovery. He adjusted his cufflinks carelessly. You can move to the guest room temporarily. When I didn't respond, he assumed agreement. Also, there's a charity gala next week. The Blackwoods are auctioning some pieces. I'll send you the list. But Victoria wants to go. She mentioned wanting to wear your constellation gown. Give her everything. I interrupted, looking up with a smile. Patience come first. His expression flickered. Then relief washed over him as he leaned in for a kiss. I turned away. The kiss met air. Sophie. He sighed disapprovingly. Still upset? Everything I do is for you. He rubbed his temples. Should I just watch you become estranged from your family? Shouldn't you appreciate my sacrifice? What a grand sacrifice, sacrificing the chance to legally marry his true love. Or sacrificing intimate moments in his penthouse. Yes, I heard myself respond numbly. You're right. Those 3 words pleased him. His expression softened before he headed to the bathroom. As water ran, his phone lit up again. I stared at the glowing screen and reached for it against my better judgment. Victoria's messages flooded in. Alex, my last wish is a round-the-world honeymoon with my first love. Look, I made the itinerary myself. I opened the file, scrolling through page by page. Sunset suites in Santorini. Candlelit dinners beneath the Eiffel Tower. Gondola breakfasts in Venice. All the places he'd promised to take me but never did. My fingers trembled uncontrollably. All these years, I'd been a cheap substitute, filled with recycled sweet words and promises to plug the hole left by his unattainable first love. I remembered our rushed wedding, no photos, no honeymoon, just dinner with his family at the Blackwood estate. He hadn't even gotten me a bouquet. He'd sworn he'd make it up with a grand ceremony later. That promise was repeatedly mentioned, always postponed because he was too busy. Yet now, this busy man could clear his schedule to accompany his new bride through every wedding detail from engagement to honeymoon. Time could always be found. I just wasn't worth it. I locked the phone and set it back, fingers ice cold. 3 years of my life, wasted on a dog. When Alexander emerged in a towel, I was washing dishes. Sophie. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. Let the housekeeper handle that. Didn't you text me about a big surprise today? I forced a smile, unconsciously touching my stomach. Just kidding. Chapter 4. The next morning, my phone reminded me of the monthly Blackwood family dinner. Despite everything, I respected his grandparents. No matter how absurd this marriage had become, I couldn't lose face before the elders. I applied light makeup to hide my sleepless exhaustion. The carved wooden doors of the Blackwood estate were ajar. As I moved to enter, I froze. In my usual seat sat Victoria. She wore an elegant white dress, hair swept up, sipping soup Alexander offered her. Tori, this soup is good for your stomach. Have more. His parents showed no displeasure. I remembered my first family dinner when his mother made me stand and serve everyone, only allowing me to sit and eat cold leftovers after they'd finished. Alexander had simply said, old families have many rules. Sorry for the inconvenience. Rules, apparently, only applied to those who weren't favored. My nails dug into my palms, but I felt no pain. I turned to leave. Sophia? Victoria suddenly looked up, feigning surprise. Come sit. All eyes shot toward me like arrows. Alexander strode over, gripping my wrist. Why are you here? I shouldn't be. I laughed incredulously. Mom and Dad think we're divorced. I stared at him. So I alone had been maintaining appearances, afraid this farce would hurt the elders. But they all knew. They all approved. By now, there was even less reason to stay. I'm not feeling well. I need to go rest. No. His grip tightened. Victoria asked you to sit. If you leave, she'll overthink things. Alexander. My voice shook. Sophia Harrison. He cut me off sharply, looking at me like an unreasonable stranger. I know exactly why you showed up today. My eyes instantly reddened. From the table, Victoria began coughing dramatically, as if about to expire. Alexander immediately released me and rushed to her, not sparing a glance at my stumbling form. Victoria spoke weakly. Sophia, are you still blaming me? If you leave now, you won't forgive me. Alexander's face darkened. Sophia, sit down. I didn't move. With one look from him, 2 housekeepers approached, pressing my shoulders down, forcing me into a chair. Be reasonable, Alexander said coldly. Don't make this difficult for everyone. Satisfied that I wasn't struggling, he squeezed my hand perfunctorily before returning to Victoria's side, continuing his devoted care. I sat like an outsider, pressed into the corner seat. His sister and cousins whispered and giggled. Some people occupied the position. For 3 years but can't compare to 3 days of the real deal. Exactly. My brother wanted divorce long ago, just delayed it out of courtesy. Victoria is so wonderful, gentle, and generous. Unlike someone who's always cold-faced. I endured their barbs. When dinner ended, I stood to bid farewell to his grandparents. His grandmother nodded dismissively. I may be strict, but I taught you according to Blackwood standards for the lady of the house. And you? Frequenting nightclubs and bars. If Victoria hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known how low you'd sunk. My blood instantly froze. These baseless accusations a parting gift from my own sister? Grandma. Alexander suddenly spoke up, frowning. Enough. I looked at him, feeling slightly better. At least he was defending me. But his next words were, Victoria has a weak heart. Don't let her hear such dirty things. I was speechless. The man who'd shared my bed for 3 years couldn't even say, she's not that kind of person. Chapter 5. Leaving the Blackwood estate, the night wind was cold. Every previous visit had been with Alexander. This time I came alone and left alone. My phone buzzed with a news alert. High society scandal, Blackwood heir's wife replaced by sister. The photo showed me seated at the staff table at their wedding. The comments were all mockery. Heard she goes to clubs nightly picking up male models. Deserves the divorce. The ex-wife's table was added last minute, with fewer place settings than the main table. The Blackwood's position is clear. 3 years of marriage without kids. Mr. Blackwood probably never touched her. Now the real love is back, certain people should disappear. Finally. The substitute is gone. 3 years and it's still her true love needs no explanation. I calmly closed my phone. 3 years ago, when Victoria's scandal first hit the news, Alexander had immediately mobilized the PR team. All negative coverage disappeared. Within 3 hours. Now my false rumors spread unchecked, and he didn't care. Walking to the door, my phone vibrated frantically. Mom, Victoria wants a family photo. Get to the studio now. Dad, don't be difficult. She doesn't have much time left. Matt, if you dare not show up, I'll disown you as my sister. I sighed. Victoria and I were half-sisters, but Mom raised her. Even as the biological daughter, I could never replace Victoria in Mom's heart. Victoria was right, I never liked sharing my things growing up. Because they didn't know that everything they got effortlessly, I had to claw from the dirt to obtain. Parents would forget to give me allowance when giving Matt and Victoria theirs. The housekeeper forgot I was allergic to mangoes, nearly killing me several times with desserts. Even on my wedding day, Mom cried saying, if Victoria hadn't been deceived into going abroad, today's bride should have been her. Now they wanted me, the woman whose husband was stolen, to smile in a family photo playing Happy Family. My phone buzzed again. This time from Alexander, just a location pin, come immediately. I laughed coldly and turned off my phone. This time, I wasn't pleasing anyone. About to enter, 2 strange men suddenly appeared. They grabbed my arms. From both sides. What are you doing? I struggled violently. Let go. The black car sped through the night. I gripped the door handle. Kidnapping? Revenge? Or? The car screeched to a halt outside the photo studio. I realized Alexander had me kidnapped. I was pushed inside, shaking with cold. Victoria wore a white wedding dress, leaning against Alexander. Sophia's here? She smiled sweetly. Stand next to me. Matt immediately grabbed me, afraid I'd cause a scene. She stands next to me. Today's about you. During positioning, I was gradually pushed to the edge. After the photos, I trembled as I tried to leave. Victoria suddenly approached, whispering in my ear, Sophia Harrison, are you a doormat? I stole your husband, why aren't you fighting back? I knew she was provoking me. At home, she'd always needle me until I lashed out, then play the victim. But this time, I didn't react. Not worth it. I turned to leave. She suddenly threw herself backward, her dress tearing loudly. Everyone immediately surrounded her. Sophia Harrison. Alexander rushed over first, slapping me hard. Apologize. My ears rang. The violent fall triggered sharp pain in my abdomen. Alex. I suddenly realized something was wrong, clutching my stomach and bending. Over. My stomach hurts, take me to the hospital. My baby, the child I'd hoped for 2 years. Faking illness from one slap. Alexander sneered. Victoria has terminal cancer and isn't as dramatic as you. Sophia, you're still overdramatic like when you were young, Mom glared at me. Victoria's dying, can't you just let her have this? Matt grabbed my hair, forcing me to look up. Hit in the face but holding your stomach was your performance for. They surrounded Victoria and left, no one looking back. I curled up on the studio floor, phone screen stained with blood. Finally, I pressed that long-buried number, come get me now. Everything you proposed. I accept. Chapter 6. When Alexander brought Victoria back to the mansion, it was 10 p.m. He headed straight for the master bedroom. The door was closed clearly, someone was upset inside. Sophie, his voice softened. I mentioned Victoria would stay here for treatment. Since you pushed her at the studio, her condition worsened. I'm worried about leaving her alone, so I brought her early. His knuckles rapped against the wood, creating dull thuds. He continued, as discussed, move to the guest room for now. Before he could finish, Victoria started coughing delicately. Alexander immediately turned, freezing as he gripped the door handle. The master bedroom door wasn't locked. The darkness seeping through the crack made his heart skip. He gently pushed open the door. Moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. The bed was perfectly made, the bathroom empty. No sign of life. Alex. Victoria called timidly. Is Sophia still angry with me? Alexander snapped back, just laughing coldly. She's learned to throw tantrums. Good saves her the embarrassment of moving to the guest room in person. He loosened his tie irritably. Don't worry, she'll be back tomorrow. He spoke with certainty but didn't notice his emotions were already spiraling. Downstairs, he frowned and asked the housekeeper, Mrs. Blackwood didn't come home today? I'm not sure. The housekeeper kept her head down. But Madam left her keys on the dining table. Alexander's brow furrowed deeper, then Victoria's soft, interrupted. Turning back, he saw her eyes red. It's all my fault. Because I took her place, she doesn't want this home anymore, doesn't want you? Alexander rubbed his temples. She knows you're sick. Don't overthink. Then he saw the wedding ring on the coffee table, his heart suddenly skipping a beat. That simple band I'd bought carelessly, which Sophia had treasured for 3 years. She'd been afraid of losing it in the shower, afraid of scratching it while cooking. Even after I'd put on my wedding ring with Victoria, she'd never removed hers. Now it lay abandoned on the glass table, forgotten. Chapter 7. Cough, cough. Light coughing disrupted Alexander's thoughts. He quickly helped Victoria upstairs to rest. As if not looking at the ring meant nothing had changed. The next morning, Alexander woke with a hoarse voice. Sophie, I have an international conference today, I need to wear. He cut himself off mid-sentence. He'd almost forgotten Sophia had stormed off. Throughout their marriage, whenever he was home, she'd always have his suit pressed and ready. But today, the woman beside him needed his care instead. Her sleeping face was beautiful, but somehow, he had no interest in admiring it. He got up and went to the closet himself. When the automatic lights came on, he was startled by the half-empty wardrobe. Alex? Victoria appeared in the doorway in a silk nightgown. I checked flights. The woman's lips moved, saying something. But he just stared at the half-empty closet, hearing nothing. His thoughts drifted to the day Victoria returned. Everyone demanded I give up my husband. Sophia had cried that it wasn't fair. When they got home, she'd angrily packed to leave, but stayed because he'd said he wanted her dumplings. But this time, she'd left so quietly, as if nothing could make her stay. What do you think of this plan? Victoria excitedly waved her phone. Alexander finally focused. The Maldives? Can your health handle it? The doctor says my indicators are good. Color rose in her pale cheeks. Consider it, fulfilling my last wish? After consideration, he nodded. At dinner, his mother-in-law called. Victoria told me everything. The voice was loving. Take her to relax. As for Sophia. Mom. Victoria suddenly grabbed the phone, glancing at the distracted Alexander, and whimpered, don't pressure Alex. I won't go. She coughed until she couldn't straighten up. It's not some essential dying wish anyway. Alexander patted her back gently. Don't say that. I'll tell Sophie. He reached for his phone, but Matt burst in and snatched it away. Don't tell her. She'll definitely try to stop it. Wait until you're in the Maldives to notify Herbie then, her tantrums won't matter. Alexander reluctantly abandoned the idea of informing her. Outside, it began to rain. Alexander suddenly remembered Sophia was afraid of thunder. During the last storm, she'd curled in his arms asking, if I disappeared one day, would you look for me? How had he answered? You couldn't escape me if you fled to the ends of the earth. But now. Victoria coughed lightly, pulling back his attention. Looking at that pale face, he told himself he was just fulfilling a dying person's wish. Sophie was being petty. Besides, she was still her sister. Before the private jet took off, Alexander impulsively opened their chat history. The last message was from 4 days ago. Come home early, I have amazing news to tell you. He stared at that lonely green bubble, fingers hovering over the keyboard. After long hesitation, he finally sent. Victoria and I went to the Maldives. Back next week. What souvenir do you want? A red exclamation mark immediately appeared. Alexander's fingers stiffened. He'd been blocked. Chapter 8. Alex? Victoria wrapped her scarf around herself, approaching. Her eyes swept over his phone screen, a cold glint flashing before morphing into pitiful hurt. Is Sophia still angry with me? She bit her lip, eyes instantly reddening. It's all my fault. If not for my broken body. Alexander locked his phone. Stop overthinking. After the woman's interruption, the trip proceeded normally. Though he remained distracted throughout. At the hotel, Victoria immediately pressed against him. Alex. She breathed heavily in his ear. We're legally married now. What are you still hesitating about? Alexander caught her wandering hands, voice strained. Your health isn't ready. Victoria bit her lip unwillingly, melting into his arms. But I can handle it. Alexander patted her back absently, his gaze falling on the phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up and darkened, never showing that familiar number. I'll get you some water. He escaped to the floor-to-ceiling windows and lit a cigarette. Throughout the trip, he was eager to return home. His doubts about Victoria's behavior grew. One day she'd be too weak to walk, the next she'd be running on the beach collecting shells. Alex, she returned from the ocean in a bikini, skin slightly sunburned. The doctor says sunbathing helps my condition. Returning to the room for something, he accidentally knocked over her bag. Among the scattered items, a bottle of fertility drugs stood out conspicuously. The date showed it was newly prescribed last week. These for 2 years trying to give him a daughter. Remembering how she'd vomited constantly but still comforted him through gritted teeth, "It's fine, just some nausea, not hard at all, let's try again," his heart suddenly ached. But terminal cancer patients could take this? Even if they could, why was she taking it? Alexander slammed the suitcase shut and called his assistant, "Check all of Victoria's chemotherapy records in the country. Now." Half an hour later, the assistant called back, "Mr. Blackwood, we checked the cancer center and general hospital. No records for Ms. Harrison." The assistant paused. But what? "We found Mrs. Blackwood's miscarriage records. The date was last Wednesday. Last Wednesday. The family photo. Day." Alexander's ears rang, remembering Sophia's pale face, her bending over clutching her stomach, his own words. "Faking illness from one slap. Victoria has terminal cancer and isn't as dramatic as you." His fingers trembled as he immediately called Sophia, only to hear the cold message, "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Alexander couldn't believe it. His child, the baby he and his wife had hoped for 2 years, had been destroyed by his own hand. He frantically called his mother-in-law. "Mom, did Sophie come home? Where is she?" Mahjong sounds came through the phone. "That girl. 7 Bamboo. Who knows where she's sulking. You take good care of Victoria." He frowned and called Matt. "Has Sophie contacted you? Find her quickly. She's in her 20s, what could happen?" Matt said impatiently. "Is Victoria having fun?" Alexander suddenly found it absurd this family's indifference toward their biological daughter and sister was like treating a stranger. He hung up angrily. But in truth, was this the first time he'd known the Harrisons favored Victoria and neglected his wife? No. When he'd been engaged to Victoria years ago, he'd noticed the stubborn, neglected younger Harrison daughter. She'd been badly bullied, but her eyes shone startlingly bright, like a lighthouse in the night sea, making him inexplicably remember her face. When Victoria went abroad, had his proposal been out of spite? No. He'd genuinely wanted to give her a home, a family that would cherish her. And now, he'd personally made her homeless again. He'd foolishly thought he was waiting for someone, for unfinished feelings. But actually, that person had been by his side all along, those feelings already deeply tasted. Chapter 9. The moment the plane landed, Alexander rushed straight home. The housekeeper was dusting the entryway vase. Seeing him rush in covered in dust, she hesitated. "Sir, madam hasn't been back since you left." His steps faltered before he turned to leave again. But with his hand on the car door, he froze. Go to the Harrisons? That family who could leave her with a 104-degree fever to go on vacation wouldn't care about her whereabouts. Scrolling through his contacts, he realized with shock didn't have any of Sophia's friends' numbers. These 3 years, her entire life had revolved around him. "Sir?" The driver asked carefully. "Where to?" Amid the engine's roar, his grandfather called, "Since you're back, get to the auction immediately. The Mitchell boy's been making too many moves. Show your face." He started to speak when Mrs. Blackwood grabbed the phone. "You finally came back. I had people check that nightclub. The surveillance shows Sophia never went there. I knew my chosen daughter-in-law wouldn't be so improper. That Victoria is full of lies. If you hadn't acted first, I'd never have allowed her through our doors." Alexander's heart clenched painfully. Living with Sophia for 3 years, how could he not trust her? He just thought Victoria was lying to help their parents accept him, worried that exposing her would worsen Victoria's condition. He hadn't even said, "She's not that kind of person." He'd let the tabloids run wild with the fabricated evidence. How desperate must his Sophie have been? In a daze, he found himself at the auction venue. If not for the jade earrings on display, he wouldn't have realized he was already seated. He suddenly remembered Sophia loved collecting jade. He raised his paddle. 3 million. The familiar voice caught Alexander's attention. He turned to see Ethan Mitchell lounging with his paddle raised, and beside him, the woman he'd been desperately seeking wore an emerald dress, lips curved in a smile he hadn't seen in ages. "Sophie." He rushed over, tripping on the carpet and falling to his knees. "Sophie, there you are. I'm back, come home with me." She looked down at him with eyes as calm as looking at a stranger. That loveless gaze cut deep. "Sophie, what's wrong?" "It's me. In what capacity is Mr. Blackwood asking me to return?" She smiled, somewhat helplessly. "As my wife, of course." "Sophie, let me explain. Victoria and I are just. Someone with a fake marriage certificate for 3 years counts as a wife?" She played with the diamond ring on her finger. Alexander's face changed. "You knew?" "I'm sorry, I can explain." His voice shook. "I'll divorce her immediately. 1 month, just the cooling off period." He reached for her but was blocked by Ethan. "Sorry, Mr. Blackwood." Ethan suddenly pulled Sophia close. "She's Mrs. Mitchell now. Watch where you put your hands." Alexander froze, then responded coldly, "Sophie was married to me for 3 years. Except for that piece of paper, we were real husband and wife. You pursued her all over town back then and she didn't marry you. Now she's been mine for 3 years, why would she marry you?" Facing Ethan, Alexander regained his confidence. True, Ethan had pursued Sophia before, but only because she'd once warned him about a drug drink at a party. He owed her a favor. She'd asked him to pretend to pursue her before marriage to avoid her parents' arranged marriages. As long as Ethan maintained the pursuit, creating enough drama, her parents wouldn't dare offend him by forcing random matches on her. But Alexander Blackwood wasn't afraid of him. After Victoria fled their wedding, he'd immediately proposed to Sophia. Sophia had always envied Victoria, thinking everything of hers was better. She didn't particularly like Alexander but didn't dislike him either. Desperate to escape her family then, she'd agreed. The irony was, Sophia thought her arrangement with Ethan was just an act. He'd been genuinely pursuing her. If she'd said yes, he would have married her. While Alexander, her choice, had deceived her for 3 years with a fake certificate. Now it was time to give the right person security. She pulled out the fresh red booklet from her purse, enunciating clearly, "Sorry, but this time it's real marriage. Real certificate." On the red cover photo, she smiled radiantly. Alexander's vision went black. Then he heard Ethan's killing blow. "By the way, you should investigate why Victoria fled your wedding 3 years ago." Ethan leaned close to Alexander's ear, whispering, "The woman who made me wait 3 years for my goddess Ivy investigated her more thoroughly than your face." The auctioneer's gavel fell. Ethan stood and publicly presented the jade earrings to Sophia. Chapter 10. Investigation revealed Victoria had taken an $8 million bribe 3 years ago to leak Blackwood Industries' new energy parameters. Alexander finally understood been the fool all along. The woman he'd protected and waited 3 years for had nearly destroyed his company and ruined his marriage. Mr. Blackwood, his assistant, hesitated. "Ms. Harrison is causing a scene at the board meeting, demanding half your assets in the divorce." Alexander said nothing, did nothing. Just haunted Sophia like a ghost. Standing in the rain outside Mitchell Corp until midnight, when security offered an umbrella, he stubbornly shook his head. "She needs to see me." At her favorite cafe, he pushed a document toward her with trembling hands. "I established a foundation in your name. Didn't you always want to help underprivileged kids?" When she tried to leave, he'd block her with red eyes. "Sophie, let me atone." But she was tired. She never looked at him again. Until he mentioned their unborn child. Her steps faltered, her voice barely audible. I'd even picked out her name. Alexander collapsed to his knees as if his spine had been ripped out. Chapter 11. Later, when trying on wedding dresses, the clerk mentioned someone swaying outside kept peering in. Sophia turned to see Alexander holding a bottle, bloodshot. Eyes fixed on her dress. Ethan immediately stepped protectively in front of her. The man outside burst in anyway. "Lock screen," he croaked, pointing at the phone on the table with shaking fingers. "Our photo." The screen showed her and Ethan skiing in Switzerland. She picked up the phone calmly. "Mr. Blackwood, looking at others' phones is illegal." As if pierced by those words, he stumbled back, the bottle shattering on the floor. "I don't believe after 3 years I mean less than him. I just made a mistake. I'm a victim too. Victoria deceived everyone. Sophie, let's both divorce and get properly married, please." The boutique owner didn't recognize the famous Mr. Blackwood. Seeing her client harassed, she had security remove him. Sophia continued trying on dresses, completely unaffected. Through the glass doors being slammed shut, Alexander's voice still carried. "Sophie. I'll give you justice. Wait for me." His obsession grew like wild vines. A week later, Victoria was dragged to a private hospital and injected with special drugs. Alexander stood outside watching coldly as she went from struggling to weak until doctors confirmed, late-stage lymphoma. "Does it hurt?" he asked through the glass. "More than a miscarriage. You like pretending to have cancer? Then live out your remaining days with real cancer cells." The Harrison company collapsed under his ruthless tactics soon after. Matt was arrested for commercial crimes. Her parents knelt before Sophia, tearfully repenting. "We were blind, deceived by that ungrateful girl for 20 years. Save your brother, just go back to Alexander and you can save him, save the family business." She laughed coldly and held a press conference to cut ties. Even if the law didn't support severing blood relations, she'd announce to the world. She'd provide the legal minimum support, not a penny more. When Alexander learned Sophia would rather disown her family than return to him to save her brother, he finally realized nothing could threaten her anymore. Later, Ethan threw Sophia a globally broadcast dream wedding. News of Alexander's car accident came that midnight. She stood outside the ICU watching him covered in tubes until his heart stopped. The nurse couldn't pry open his clenched right hand and looked at her helplessly. "It seems to be for you." It was a blood-soaked birthday card. Inside, his sharp handwriting had blurred. "Sophie, so lucky to have met you. Dated her first birthday as Mrs. Blackwood." The end.